is the thought of lobbying, asking, promoting our cause for some kind of a waiver from OSPI to say, hey, we're doing this thing that's effective for the children, we're transforming, and it's valuable. Would you invest in our investment in operating costs in order to do this, also while we're studying the impacts, program evaluation of these program changes. And so the hard and fast notion of that, what we get from OSPI, I think it might be more open to negotiation, and we could perhaps, the other thing is, Seattle, when you look at the OSPI funding and the efficiencies, they're their own cohort, and their cost is way different than everyone else's cost. It's much, much, much more costly, largely because they put most of their common parlance, regular transportation system onto the city transportation, which we don't have. We're a car-dependent region. They're a public transit available region, and then so the vast majority of their transportation is special ed, which is always much more expensive than buses that you can fill up with, up to 60 kids or whatever. But that notion that, in some sense, OSPI has already given an efficiency waiver to Seattle to say, hey, we would like something similar and have you support our investment in our kids' safety, learning, for health reasons. Would you agree? We'll do everything possible. We'll bring in one of your consultants to make sure we're being as efficient as possible. Would you come in here and let us be fully reimbursed while we're trying to advance the health, safety, and well-being of the children?
Bellevue is similar in they bus their high school kids with public transit.
They have public transit options that we just don't have.
And that, in our looking at it, we tried. We tried
Yeah.
trying to figure it out, but we thought this would be great.
Yeah, we got one bus line.
One of
our
Down
initial
Bothell Way.
couple
Hardly
cases,
anything
two
else.
counties.
Two
with
counties, two bus
and
lanes.
Woodville.
transportation systems.
Yeah.
Which
So-
step?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just having a hard time tracking from this sheet to there.
Yes, and the
So which one are these on here?
I'll have Carolyn work on that. So I want to remind the board, as we went through this process, right, there was a lot of unknowns that we couldn't answer.
Amy
Okay.
also wants that information,
Okay.
so we,
Okay,
I
hold
think we
on.
just need to
When-
stop.
once
for a
they-
minute.
Well, yeah,
So-
no, I think
This is
A is A,
Okay.
but I'm not.
This is A. They're all the ones that got votes.
Okay,
A,
what's-
B.
No, I'm on a
Page.
different
No,
page.
we're on
I want
the
to see the original projected costs
Oh, the cost.
to this
Gotcha.
cost that I have right now.
So the original 6 that were identified by the steering committee, when they revisited after the study session with folks in January, and then after they got the parameters survey, they went back to the original 21 model
21, and
options
came up with
and
another
re-identified
So they don't-
a new
they don't-
6 with
they
the
don't
whole
match.
They don't
task
match up.
force.
They don't match.
So they, after they had gotten those considerations, the task force identified a new 6. I think the only one that was costed twice is option A.
So-
That it was included in the original top 6 and reappeared in the top 6 that was identified by the whole task force in the spring after getting feedback from the community.
So maybe we didn't leave this one in here because it just confused
Well, I
That was
think
part of the
what,
process.
I think we're just trying to share the process
Okay,
of
okay.
how we
Right.
came up with
Okay.
21 to 6, and then went back out and gathered
And you
information
went back out because you surveyed the community
around the parameters and
Parameters.
considerations.
and then you went, oh, this isn't exactly matching, let's see if we can find some other options.
We were
Yes.
really,
I think
really
Nancy
trying to
tried.
find if we missed anything.
Okay.
We came up with all kinds of considerations and parameters, and we thought, well, we want to ask in case there's something we missed.
How did you guys know the dollars though for these three?
Because that's what we ran a modeling.
They
we
modeled
ran
it
the
for
Before
us.
you did the
Because
survey?
that was also part of our
Before we
process
did the
was,
survey. Part of
are we asking for something that is just beyond ridiculous and not even possible?
So part of the process of the task force was trying to educate the task force on how the system runs. And so they were asking questions, well, can you help us understand how this operates? What's the cost of this look like? What's the revenue of this? How does this work? So we took their original 6 that they identified, and we costed that out and ran a modeling system and brought that back and said, okay, here's what your original 6 looks like. And then the next question was, well, are we looking at all the right things? should we go out to the community and ask for additional information around parameters and considerations? And then the task force decided, yes, we want to do that. Went back out and said, oh, we got more information from the community, but we also got some clarification from the board. And then they went out and then identified the next 6 options that was more closely aligned with that.
It was part of it was on that middle survey, when we were just asking for considerations and parameters, there was the question of, do we put times in there? Do we, even if they're made up, do we give people examples? And so we didn't then.
Right, I
So that
remember that one.
required another survey that had actual times.
Information.
Yeah, I was just wondering the dollar piece, I didn't read that in here.
So I know the process in here seems complicated, but part of the process that I think the task force had to go through was learning themselves about how this works, getting a little bit smarter, and then asking smarter questions.
And I mean, the whole wooden bill all by itself was, we just tried to, for lack of a better word, think outside the box.
Yeah.
Can we make Metro work?
Yeah.
Can we make wooden bill its own thing, and how much would that cost?
Yeah.
We lost a lot of can we ...
Yeah.
And they they showed us, you know, whether.
And again, these clarifying questions, it's helpful to understand, it's such granular information and it's totally fine with me personally if those 6 options, that's not what but again, I really appreciate this time of going through and understanding it because it's helping to generate information.
A community member and an employee, it blew my mind several times during the process to understand how the state funds education and how we got the money. And when they say it's fully funded, and I'm like, but it's about 80% of what we actually spend, you know. So there were a lot of those moments throughout the process where I got really kind of angry.
You ready for vote?
Yeah. And then in terms of agenda check, so one of the questions I have for the board is that, because it's really useful to get here, is kind of a question of, I mean, I'm thrilled with what the task force has done, and I think this notion that Erin gives voice to, and I'm sure Ryan and Carolyn, of educating and bringing everyone along to say, okay, here's what the challenges are, here's what the challenges are. And it's like when I teach research, so much of research is finding where the cheese isn't when you're trying to map the cheese maze, but you have to document. We can't do Woodinville differently for all these reasons.
And we had, sorry to interrupt, we had members that did their own research outside of, on
Like
their own
Nancy,
time.
I'm sure.
Nancy, it's amazing.
I know
She's an amazing researcher. So there was a lot of time spent outside of community, our thousands of hours or whatever that we spent, individuals, and coming back to the task force with information.
Right.
I think the task force drove the direction by the questions that they were asking. I don't think we put anything, or one of the things we tried to really do is be really objective. And so one of the things we've asked the task force and your subcommittee was really about what information do you guys need for you to educate yourself around this. So when we talk about the 21 models or the 25 models, that was just information that they felt like, hey, can this work? And we said, throw it up on the board. So we sort of took a shotgun approach.
Yeah.
And I found it incredibly valuable to talk to a junior high principal, to have her tell me why that particular thing would work, or the high school, or why sports didn't, you know, because there's so many factors that it interrupts for the current model. So, you know, why doesn't that work? Can we make it work different? You know, could we put it here? It was hours and hours of what ifs that we tried to come up with.
I'm having trouble understanding the cost of the 3 models. So you gave us that slide. It basically is equal. The funds to buy the buses are all the same.
Yep, 0.
Because I now have these $10 million and now I'm trying to go back to, oh, there's no change in these 3 options. That's where I'm trying to wrap my brain around. And then the operating costs are in addition to what it typically costs to operate. So it costs X amount, but is that on top of, or is that taking into account the 2017-18 change? Like Later Start will cost 300,000 more.
So one of the
More,
things,
okay.
yeah, so one of the things that we were trying to
Well,
identify, given all
Well,
of the
Brian, now
changes.
wait, because I think Ken asked how much of, like, let's take option A, how much of the 308,000 might actually be reimbursable?
Right.
So it won't necessarily be a 308,000 cost increase if it's reimbursable at
Correct.
some percentage.
At some
So we
percentage.
just don't know what that
But
is,
that's-
because we're a year late.
That's that
Correct.
piece where
Right.
you get the
Because
algorithm
some is reimbursable.
Yeah.
We
It
just
just
don't know
depends on
how
what the
much.
state
Correct.
decides, the
Okay.
algorithm.
I think just for our own, I think it would be helpful in the future that if both columns could be operating under the same assumption. So right now you've got capital, it's not a $960,000 increase, that's what we're spending. So really,
It's
that should be zero.
Yep.
So that the operating costs, that's the additional projected
Yep.
cost to do
Yep.
later.
You're
At
correct.
least have both,
Yeah.
both.
Okay, great.
That's-
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
is this costing
Yeah.
us
So-
to do
Right.
later start.
So,
Right.
so again, remember, I think one of the things that the board asked us to do was to do our best work in trying to put together a recommendation,
For sure.
not actual facts,
Right.
or not actuals of trying to identify to the dollar, but a recommendation based on what we know today and what we can best project for 2017 with all of the changes that we have to implement. And I think what you have in front of you is the task force best guess from a recommendation perspective, gathering additional information from the community around their preferences, whatever their preferences may be, right, in a presentation that we can share with you. So the thing I want to really be careful with is that this number may change today, and we really don't know what the reimbursement will be until we actually go back and implement this and then ask the state for some reimbursement.
Yeah,
That's great
so
for a
that's-
planning level. It's a very small number,
It's
Yeah,
a
I'm not
good
trying to-
relatively
education.
speaking,
Yeah.
to
I'm not
even the
trying to-
board question. Yeah.
Pin you down, I think these numbers look actually almost like, of course, way better than what I ever expected. So I'm just trying to understand the numbers. That's it.
I also think, Brian, just for your sake, I mean, clearly the board and I mean, we all appreciate, you guys did a ton of work,
Yeah.
right? Ridiculous amount of work and did it really well and thoughtfully. I think we're a little hyper-focused on cost because we're juxtaposition with bargaining and some other big topics right now.
Well,
So that's why I think you're getting some, I think,
One of-
really key questions because it
One
really
of
does
the-
matter.
We didn't, when we began the process,
Mhm.
we did not factor cost in. We started out at, we're not even looking at it.
Big.
We're gonna go for all of these options and switch the stuff around and figure out, so that came in later.
Yeah, I think also what's in my mind is conversations before this task force was ever started, that when we discussed doing later start, it was regularly presented that it would be millions of dollars. So I think that's why I'm just like looking at these numbers going, wow, that's not what, in the beginning when we were having our study sessions, before there was ever a task force, and the board was deciding to put together a resolution. So kind of rough estimates, not
Well,
solid. So I guess I'm happy about that. I had to like kind of,
And if you look
Crunch it
at,
with
if you
everything.
look at 3-tier options, which we did, and a lot of us liked very
those are a
much,
lot more.
they're a lot
Yes.
more money.
Yeah.
That number would be very different if
Yeah.
we had picked 3-tier options to go with.
So I'm sorry, I have to facilitate here. So we have 15 minutes before the board meetings start, so I just wanted to because this is an important topic, but I want to give the task force the opportunity to finish the presentation, because we do have an open question about next steps.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the last slide.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, I think you've
Is
seen
that the
the
last slide?
recommendation, so I think the 3 options was a request from the board that give us 3 options, let us sort through the best of the 3 options. I think the task force is just recommending the sooner you can make a decision, the sooner we can start building a plan. And I think as we started talking to more staff, the concern around 2017 was all of the changes that are going to happen at the same time. So what we know in transportation today will be totally different in 2017 with the new high school, grade reconfiguration, boundary changes, and a new belt time. So that means bus stops may look differently. That means what we all, as community members, are accustomed to walking to this bus stop from our house may look totally different. And so what I think the task force was realizing is the sooner the board we can get a decision from the board one way or another, the sooner we can start working on designing a plan and working out how we're going to implement this plan.
It'll impact and, schedules for high school when zero period is.
Oh, yeah, and.
All the way
and
down to the
middle
parents
school.
who want to know if their elementary school is early or late
Yes.
because childcare, because before.
Right.
Yeah.
So, two questions. One, the decision is which one of these, that sounds stupid, but just to clarify.
Well, and I think,
I wouldn't agree with that, and I think that's where I was trying to get
Well,
to.
that's what I want to get an understanding of, that's what your understanding of
No,
what the decision is.
I think the decisions that we're looking for is we've provided you with three options.
Okay.
What those decisions, if you move forward or not move forward, is a option. If you select to choose one of the three options, that's a option. So I think it's pretty open. We're not looking
Right.
for a decision on one of the three options. We're just looking for direction.
Great, thank you. And then my follow-up question, what's the drop dead deadline? Because at what point have we pushed this off so long that we've screwed it up for you making it happen next
I
fall?
think what we said is ideally November, December, if we can have a decision point.
Love it by Thanksgiving break.
Yeah,
I
if
think
you're gonna
Thanksgiving's
move
a good-
forward with something,
Yeah.
Right.
November,
That makes a lot of
December is I
sense.
think what we
Yeah,
yeah.
okay, so that's good to know. Right?
Maybe we can beat that.
Yeah.
We think we might be able to.
Oh, are you trying to give us a gold star?
I
And
just
if
think
it-
if we've had so much great information and
Yeah.
research presented, I just don't know that we need months
I
to
don't
move from
think
here to
you're
there.
right.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
and if
I
there's
agree.
any other things that you need, we need to know what that might be so that we can get out of the chute early to get it,
Study it or do
study it or whatever that is.
I know that as a community member, I appreciated knowing the EDTF plans like a good 3 years before it happened. So we don't have 3 years here, but the sooner the better. I think change is hard, so everybody can start wrapping their brain around it earlier and better.
Okay.
And it gives people time to prepare for their
Right,
plans for
exactly.
the following year. So I think giving people a year's notice is a fair thing to do, or 9 months. is
And
much.
childcare, we
Yeah.
need to know.
Yeah.
Maybe everyone.
After school activities and that.
And it leaves coaches and community members time. My husband's a coach,
Yeah.
so this is
No,
a
there,
big deal.
So-
Oh, it
it
impacts
impacts
everything.
so many
I'm
different things. Yeah.
I'm gonna-
Everything. Yep.
So, what would you think about having the board members weigh in on their thoughts at this point right now and maybe focus on, what information would be helpful? I don't think we have to have it set in stone in terms of what next steps need to be, but having an inclination, because it obviously will help with scheduling. If more processing needs to happen, if less processing needs to happen, maybe we could, because we've done this before, it's worked well, we can do, and start with Ken, work with all 5 board members and do some check-ins.
Yeah, so I think that the task force has done an amazing job to bring us information and to get us and the community up to speed. I think it's my preference that the board would have some extended conversation that's actually board discussion. This is great to get the information. I think we need to have at least 60, maybe 120 minutes to really wrestle through with some of the issues and the topics and kind of close some loopholes, especially I think for the community. To say, yeah, we exhausted that path completely and entirely, and whatever we're going to go with is the best option that we have. And so I think we as the board need to have conversations on that. And there's learnings that I had from going through the comments especially, and I think the only way to really thoughtfully think about and build the community support, because that's my biggest concern, is we don't have a single, we don't have, and mapping, as I sent this suggestion in a brainstorm early this morning, mapping the K through 12 experience and really looking what is safe and optimal, effective learning for a kindergartner, first, second, third, fourth, and map that. And we know that what we currently have is not optimal according to the science, and then let's try and work through those things. The other issue, I think it's a big, big issue, is a lot of the concerns that we hear from the community. You know, I think our job as the board is to come up with the optimal, effective, safe learning times for our children. I think that's our job. The secondary job is all of the interruptions and inconveniences that really matter. And most of our people in our district are on very thin margin of error in terms of how their family life works, getting the kids here, there, and all that work. But many of those are tangential to the core thing of when is the optimal learning effectiveness time. And the district, with our partners, can solve, fix, mitigate the vast majority of these, what I'll just call the non-learning effectiveness inconveniences. They're real, but our job, I think, is to have the safest, most effective learning times for our kids across the K-12. And I think we've got the foundation to get there. I'm not convinced that of the options we have and how we're doing it, that we're gonna be able to make that decision that the community, you know, someone who's got a third grader says, I get it. That is the best approach, even though my third grader is gonna have, my family's gonna have this problem, I get it. So I don't go too far. I think we need to talk more about it and really map what's the experience like K through 12 and how does that meet optimal learning objectives, and then what are the, I guess, common inconveniences. They're real, they're massive, and the district, I think, needs to support and mitigate those, but I think we need to separate those into two buckets. And as I was reading, I kind of had that insight. So I think but the main point is I think we need to talk more as a board soon.
Okay, actually, I guess I know. What do you think, Sandy?
I'm ready to vote right now, but I recognize that there's needs out there, and so if that needs to happen, I'm certainly willing to support that and listen. You know, I've been at this for years now, as all of you know, and
Eight on later start.
yes, many years on later start. So I guess for me, my concern is I think that first of all, the brain power and the dedication on this task force was second to none. I mean, you're not going to find a group of people that can come up with ideas and think outside the box and problem solve. It was a phenomenal amount of people, and the representation across all the different issues and areas. I'm tired of reading yet another article about a neighboring district that's gone down this road and not been able to pull us off. And I don't want us to be another statistic with Everett and Marysville and Issaquah twice, Seattle's on their third or fourth round of this, Bellevue. I don't want to see that happen. So that's gonna be my driving factor, is I wanna see this happen. And so I wanna make sure that we don't push this too far, that we ruin it. And I wanna make sure that we don't do something so extreme that the community rises up and says, no way, that's too different, that we can't support that. So I want to get this done, and I want it to start next fall. So that's going to, I don't want to read us in the newspaper, North Shore considered it, but couldn't pull it off because the community rose up and said, no.
All right, and I will weigh in myself. I do actually have a request for one more piece of information, and that's just a clarification on the costs. You know, just, you know, the hidden slide, and just have it, because obviously, I was personally confused, okay, what was the original 6, and then just having one more summary of the cost, it's just helpful for me.
And that's our community's a big finance.
Yeah,
is
and I
number
think we
three,
should
it
be
was number
accountable for it.
1 on our first survey that we did.
Well, and that's, so I went
Yeah.
back and looked at the first survey we did in 2014, and it was interesting because there were those 20% of comments that folks wanted to stick with the status quo. So I went back to look, and what was nice about the other survey as well is it went through telephone calls to taxpayers, not necessarily parents, to see what kind of community support. It looks like we don't need to go out for a transportation levy to support this, but originally there was a concern we would, so what would the greater community support? And there, you know, it's interesting, it was 80–90%, like that 20% of folks of parents who were looking to stay with the status quo, you know, in terms of the level of support in 2014, it was an interesting map, but, you know, it did go down once you started talking about cost trade-offs, and that's why, you know, I don't want it to be, we do, you know, even 3 million as a percentage of 250 million, yeah, but not a huge percentage, obviously, but it's something that obviously affects support for the change in general, which is why I want to make sure that we highlight it. In terms of what I need to move forward, I'm in favor of doing one more 120 minutes. I'm good with that, to process as the 5 of us as a board, and then do a first and second reading. And I'm inclined to do it sooner rather than later as well. So that's where I'm at. So what do you think, Susan?
So I concur with what Sandy said. I think it's important that we make a decision and get this implemented in the fall for next year. So I think there's been a lot of work that's gone into this. I'm really appreciative and comfortable with what I've seen and read. I think taking the current situation and saying, let's make a high school later start by moving everybody later. Let's make the high school go first. Let's make the middle school go, or the elementary school go first. All different ways of trying to move that high school start time later. I think we're good models. The only thing that I would just ask as an open-ended question is, if any of these models were to rise as the favorite choice, is there ability to look at maybe a 5 or 10 minute adjustment earlier or later with some of these?
We asked
That
the
would
same
be
question.
realistic, and so that would be my one question.
They've rolled times 5 minutes
Okay.
back and forth in transportation before, and we actually asked that question as well.
So you can lower that back from 5 to 10.
We could, yeah, we can do whatever we want on the front or back end.
Listen to you.
And so, thank you for that flexibility, and I think I also would be prepared for in-depth conversation soon and be ready to vote and get this done and let our families start to plan. So,
Thank you, Jim.
thank you.
Kimberly?
So I concur with Sandy, because, and with Amy, and with you, and with you know. I don't want to bring it up. This was one of the issues that I ran on for driving. And also, this was the very first issue that I brought up to the board. And it was probably 1,000 hours of the board meeting just over this issue. And so I know, and I trust the process. I know that I think this is one of the most well-rounded task force that I believe we've had so far, though I think we could still have diversity as far as our ethnic, you know, I'd love to have seen a Hispanic parent on, but, you know, I know Nancy very well. There was?
Grace.
Oh, she wanted to bring up. Well, maybe in the smaller group then, so I could have their voice at the table. But Nancy, I know, is crazy researcher, and, you know, I love her, and I know, you know, I don't know everybody on here, but,
But Cheryl's been working on it.
and I know
Yeah.
Cheryl very well,
Yeah.
yeah.
It has
Been
been
coached.
So what's what you need?
So I'm giving my background. So I'm saying that in support, trying to compliment you guys on the job that you've done. Also though, I'm a numbers person, and I remembered that the financial, that's why I kept hammering on it, Ryan, was because when we looked at financial and we were asking the community, there's going to be a cost increase, it went down to, I think, about 49% in favor. It dropped significantly when we asked the broad community. And so because of that, that's why I, along with Amy, think that we need to have clarity. I know they're estimates, so I'm not
Well, yeah, which
pinning
is
you
fine.
down to $1, but that this was a surprise to me in a good way. But I wasn't expecting it to not be that low of a cost. So, but I would like to make a decision, and I think we need to be leaders and implement this well. I just have one more clarification right here. Was it, so option B was the least supported in the community? Is that, am I reading that correctly?
Least supported is the most.
Most of
Size, okay. And so really between A and C, we're looking at for community support, they're equal in preferred, but A is the least liked when we look at.
The least.
The least disliked, I guess that's
I
what I'm
like to
getting
put it
confused.
in, option C is the least preferred. It's the,
It had the lowest
it
negative
has the
reaction.
lowest
Yes.
negative.
Yes.
Is
Option C has the lowest negative,
Right.
and
So-
the highest.
And the highest preferred.
So when we're looking at the option that our community wanted, and obviously it's not everybody, option C would be the one that our,
The top, the leader, the, you know, well, not by tons, but it
Yeah.
falls to the top of the list of preferred, I guess.
It's not, you have that chart, right? It's like
Yeah.
39 preferred.
yeah, I know, and I, for some reason, it's like the negative, positive, that isn't,
Yeah.
not,
I know, it's,
that's why I'm clarifying, because at first I thought B was the option the community wanted, that's why I had to clarify.
So, and
I think that's what I looked
apologize,
at.
but since it's 7 o'clock, so what, is there anything else you need?
just
Are you-
clarifying costs, just
Yeah.
more,
Yeah,
just be
just-
really clear.
Really clear on cost, really clear on, maybe make this, I think, I love how you guys did it, but more clear on which option was the community.
Put 1, 2, 3 next.
Okay,
So I had one,
Maybe she can do a stats thing and do the negative, positive together.
okay. Anything else before we have one more comment from Ken, before we adjourn?
what's a question? I didn't realize we were asking for data. What I would like from a numbers perspective is an economist estimate of the rate we would pay bus drivers in order to hire enough bus drivers to run 3 tiers. I would like an economist estimate of the rate we would pay bus drivers in order to get a sufficient number of applicants and bus drivers to run 3 tiers.
Can you, I'm not quite understanding.
So
Yeah.
a concern about hiring bus drivers is that there's not enough of them.
Correct.
Okay, and so I'm saying, in every labor market that's ever been known to man, if you raise the price, you increase the number of people that come into a profession. So what's that price look like in order to, for this district and current market demographics, to be able to hire enough bus drivers to run a 3rd tier?
What do you need, less bus drivers for 3 tiers?
No,
No, you need
that's
way
all.
more.
And
You
one
need
bus.
more buses and more drivers
And a
because,
Yeah.
place to put
because
buses.
right now where you're having,
I understand,
you have 4 tiers.
right,
So Kimberly, when you have 4 tiers, the buses do this tier.
Oh,
Same
and
amount
then-
seated, more,
So if
less
you
runs.
combine a tier
Yeah.
together, you need another set of buses.
Okay. So that's what
I know Ryan presented this
I want
before.
the data to exhaust that
So,
question.
and I would add to that, how that affects other people who are paid in the district.
I was gonna say, we probably
Because-
have to look at,
I can
Yeah,
tell you
I still would like that piece of data
It
if
would-
we're
it would
asking for a
affect
piece of information with
other jobs.
Well, I think it's unfortunate we
Just
didn't
for-
have a
just for
couple other
clarity,
parents.
Well, I just don't know how you would do that,
Yeah.
other than to look
Economists
at
can
what
do it.
other, well, but I guess my question is, if, so we just met with transportation today, and they lost 5 more bus drivers over the summer. And part of it is the challenge of the job. It's you work 4 hours, you get a break, you got 4 more, and
It's
they're.
not necessarily just pay.
Right, that's not necessarily the motivation, so I'm just,
so,
Metro is struggling to get bus drivers, also if you check their Facebook, every other post is like, hey, we need bus drivers.
so
really,
can I tack something onto that as another board member?
It's hard.
The study, because it would affect other bargaining units, if the study would take by an economist so long that it puts Thanksgiving in jeopardy, as a board member, I don't know if I would be able to support that.
Right, well, I mean, I can call up an economist at any of our local universities and get a rough cost of that. I mean, it can be done, but if, just to get some sense of what that is.
Okay.
Because I think that's one of the barriers that creates a question to what I think, right, and then I think we have these ironclad or rock-hard constraints that to really get the best system, we might pick up against them. And I respect everyone else's desire to move forward. I share the desire to move forward. So that's why I want to, but I think exhausting all options
And
is.
as a board, I would say you would look at other factors besides pay, because it's not just pay.
And the other factor is the cost of more buses. That was another significant.
And yeah, well, I mean, if you added, if you did a 3-tier, you would add quite a few more buses, just, you know.
So then our scheduling of the next study section, we'll probably wait and see how long it would take to get that data back and then.
So,
I will, are you asking me to get that data? I think you are, probably, right? So I will locate an economist to work with Ryan on that.
yeah, we just wanted to make sure we clarified two action items we have.
Right.
First is trying to identify Ken's questions around the what rate of pay would it take to complete the 3-tier and fill the need of the
Right.
3-tier option. And then the second thing is to clarify the cost around the options that we provided. If it's six, is it the 6 options or the 3 options?
The
Three.
three.
I think we're down to 3.
Just if you can have the
Yeah, don't
baseline.
confuse me with
I think
this.
it's
Yeah, that's what you
Last
the baseline.
slide,
Yeah, I think we're comfortable with 3.
do you know?
Pretty much everyone. Yeah.
Okay.
I was already
We'll
confused.
go
All right.
do
Very,
that.
very
All
much.
right, adjourn, and then board, would 5 minutes be enough with a break?
Yeah.
Biology.
Okay, thank
Do we
you.
have to